I don't normally do this in a 20-minute time segment, so I've been looking at how I can give you a sound bite that you can take with you and maybe impact your life. And so I decided to tell you a little bit about what I do and then share with you a visual of the one thing that changed the trajectory of my life when I was a young mother. So I work with, I'm an addiction recovery consultant. I work with highly functioning, high-profile addicts and alcoholics. What that means is those are people who still have a job, they still have a home, they still have a family, but they have a problem with some kind of addiction. It could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be gambling, it could be being a workaholic. Whatever it is that's impacting their life, and they won't go into a treatment center because they don't want their employer to know, or they can't take 21 days away from their life to do that. And besides, if you're looking at the results from treatment centers, there's a huge recidivism rate. They don't go to 12-step or anonymous open meetings because even though it says anonymous, people still talk. And they can't take a chance on being seen there by the media or by a colleague. So those are the people that I work with. What we know is that in this time of year, there's a lot of relapse going on. And a relapsing alcoholic is an untreated codependent. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is the family that these things might be happening in. There's an old story about the elephant in the living room. And in a family, there are no secrets in a family, only things not talked about. And the elephant in the living room is when you have an alcoholic or an addict or somebody who needs help, but the whole system is invested in walking around the problem, tiptoeing, walking on eggshells, instead of addressing it so that that person can get help. Another word for that is called enabling. And we, as women and mothers and grandmothers and wives, seem to fall into that role by our nurturing nature. It's not uncommon for us to be trying to help everybody succeed and look good. And so one of the things that happened to me many years ago is that I was working with a client who, she had a binge eating disorder, and she couldn't quite get abstinent and stay that way. And so as we began to work into some other issues, we found that she had some chronic and severe childhood sexual abuse going on. Her father was a high-profile executive in the community, and so when she had tried to tell as a child, nobody listened, because he was more valuable at that point than she was. That was the nature of the business. And so we went, there was a speaker in Las Vegas, Nevada, which is where I was at the time, who was talking about toxic shame. And I went as a support person for her. I went to help her because that's what helping people do. That's what women do. We go to help them. I didn't have a problem, I didn't think, and so that's what I did. Within about an hour, I had said to her, you know, I know that this day was supposed to be about you, but I really have a lot of issues that just popped up that I need to deal with. And they were family issues, because even though I wasn't raised in an alcoholic home, my husband was. And some of the dynamics that were displayed that day, I saw not only in his family, but in the family we were creating together. And as a mother, I took it as my responsibility to see what I could do to break that cycle. And so the work that I did then and the work that I've done since is about preventative treatment. I work with addicts and alcoholics who are now maybe just through detox or have been sober for a month or two but are afraid they're going to relapse. But if I can get to reach the families, then we can do some preventative work, and maybe they'll never get there. Or maybe you'll never have to feel like it's all your fault if they do. So what I typically do, and what I'm not going to do today, typically I would have some of you volunteer and come up to do a skit, but because we're videotaping and because I value your anonymity and your privacy, then I'm going to do a one-act play, which I've never done, so let's see how that works. I'm going to describe for you the different roles around the alcoholic, explaining that one alcoholic can keep 20 codependents busy. And that when I say alcohol, it's not just alcohol. You can substitute any word for that. The World Health Organization gives a definition of addiction as a pathological relationship with a mood-altering substance, event, or thing that has life-damaging consequences. So pathological, not normal, not healthy, not sane, not rational. It's a relationship. And so when we have people who won't quit no matter how hard we try or how much we love them, they're in a primary relationship with their drug of choice. It's not about being in love with us. And it's mood altering. They do it to either feel better or not to feel at all, to numb out or to feel better. And it has life-damaging consequences. Those might not show up right away. They may still have their home or their business, but usually if it's affecting the family, those are life-damaging consequences that our culture doesn't catch until they start to come to work drunk, or until they lose their home, or until they overspend at gambling. So I'm going to take on the role of the addict, and I'll go through the addict, the codependent, and maybe 3 of the family roles. If you see yourself in those, then that's great. You'll probably see somebody you know, because all of us know at least one person who's got some of this dynamic going on. Any work that I do is completely confidential, so I have a sign-up sheet at the back. If you want more information, or if you just want to go to the website, there's some free downloads there, things you can review. You're more than welcome to do that. And I don't bill insurance, so there is no insurance trail. I have one client who is 33 and an executive, and his parents pay me anonymously by PayPal. So they couldn't track his coaching with me if they wanted to. So it's completely anonymous and completely safe, okay? Okay, so the wall. Move over to the wall. Excuse me. I'm being coached myself today. All right. So for the addict, an addiction is 3 things. It is impulsive, compulsive, and obsessive. First, our minds can't think about anything except the next fix, the next bite, the next bet, the next drug. It is compulsive. Once we start, we can't keep ourselves, we can't stop. So other people say, you know, I can take 1 drink, why can't he just leave it alone? An alcoholic can't stop. Wishes they could, don't understand why they can't. But there's both a physical and a mental compulsion that happens, and then when the compulsion kicks in, they can't not do it. Okay? And it's impulsive. You can be going along, somebody will have, it's like dieting. Everybody's dieted. You go along for the first 2 weeks just great, and then Friday night happens, and you know, you have one something, and you throw up your hands and say, oh, what the heck, I might as well have the whole bag. And then start over on Monday morning. It is the same process. The difference is you can start over on Monday morning. Somebody with an addiction probably can't, because once that kicks in, that whole cycle is back in. So I'm going to pick a point on the wall. I'm going to use that television. And what happens with an addict is they start out with a preference. This is called, you can call it hard drinking or binge drinking. They don't drink all the time. They only drink on weekends. They only have beer and wine. They don't drink scotch. And so that starts out that way, and this person in their college years or in high school might be doing some recreational drugs. And what happens is over time, as that takes over their life, that focus becomes more and more intense. And the draw, it's like a big magnet. The addiction will draw them away from all of the things that in the beginning, that what we call the real self values, their faith, their family, the love relationships. And so it just continues to draw them like a big, big magnet. So if you can imagine that for a minute, then what happens is, as I begin and I've got all this ambition and all this promise before me as a young person, and I start to engage in, and I won't even use meth because that's a real fast downslope, but there are other things that you can do for 20 years, and it's a slow suicide. It's a gradual decline. But in those early years, this addict will meet up with a young woman, and they will marry. Now, people who come from addicted family systems usually do one of two things. They either become alcoholic or they marry one, statistically speaking. So what's going to happen, you know, you see people who run across the fields at each other, love at first sight. We've all seen the movies, and it's slow motion, and those are sick people attracting sick people. Okay, that's what that is. It's really not the love and flowers you think it is. So as that happens, this person becomes more and more and starts to pull away. Okay, I'm changing roles now, but I'm not moving, see? So when they bring in a mate, what happens is that person puts their hands on their shoulders. Aren't we a happy, wonderful couple? We're newly married, we're happy, life is good. I'm going to solve all the problems, married to get away from home. And none of the problems I grew up with, we're not going to have because I'm going to do it different. My kids are going to be different. My life is going to be different. We are full of promise, okay? Until that addiction continues to pull. And what happens is they're going to fight. There's going to be tension in this relationship because he's going to blame her for making him want to drink. If you wouldn't nag so much, I wouldn't have to drink. I need a night out with my buddies. So he's going to begin to pull away so that he can get more and more alone with his addiction. And the harder he pulls, the more she's going to hang on to keep him where she needs him, to keep him in line. Now, she's going to do that for one of two reasons. She either needs it for her survival, or she's got some unfinished business from childhood that she's trying to fix. She couldn't fix it with Dad. She can fix it here. She can make this life perfect. And the harder he pulls, the more she pulls back. And the more she pulls back, the harder he pulls away. Has anybody experienced anything like that? It's like having a broomstick between me and my partner, and every time I try to get close, they go away. And every time I pull back, they come closer. You ever notice that little dynamic? You never really get closer. It's just this push-me-pull-you dance that goes on in dysfunctional systems. Okay. So after a year or two of that, their marriage has got some problems. They're not addressing him because he won't talk or she won't talk. And so they think the perfect solution here is to have a baby. We will have a baby, and that will solve this problem. And I know people who do that. I've done it myself. I've been there. And so into that is a first child. The first baby is born. Should I go on this side? Okay. So in this, the first child is born, and the first child is the one that's going to balance the system. It's like a tripod. It is, you've got two unsteady legs with the addict and the codependent, and that third child, that firstborn child, balances the thing out, makes a stable union. It's a stable union. So this one comes into the picture, and now we are three. And now we are perfect. Life is wonderful. Things are stable. For a little while, Dad comes back into line. Mom thinks it's going to be solved the problem. And Mom has something else to focus on besides the drinking Dad. She now has a child to throw her energy into. The first child is a born leader. They are an overachiever, statistically speaking. They bring legitimacy to the family. But after a while, as this push-me-pull-you continues, their job is to hold things together too. So they put one hand on Dad to hold him in line, and maybe the oldest child is the one who goes to the bars to get him out of the bars at night because Mom, in my case, Mom can't drive, so that's what they're going to do. And then they put a hand on Mom to hold her up because she's getting tired. She's starting to get tired by this point. And so they do this to hold the system together, face forward, straight A's, smile pretty. Nothing wrong here. Isn't life good? We look really good, don't we? That's what happens. As long as that firstborn has the energy to keep that up. So along about then comes a middle child. Anybody here a middle child? There's a dynamic with middle children that's really kind of interesting, and that is that the middle child is the identified patient. The middle child is the one who comes into the system. Now we've got a perfect tripod here. Middle child comes in over here, and everybody points their finger and says, that's the problem. We're fine. That's the problem. We were fine until that one came along. That one is the one who goes out and gets involved in drugs first. That's the one who goes out and ditches school. That's the one who gets pregnant early. That's the one who runs away from home. That's the one who ends up in prison because they are living the role they've been assigned. That's the problem, and they believe it. They believe that's the problem. And so, after they try and fit in, try and find their own niche, try and be a family hero, and there's no room for them because we have a perfectly balanced system, then they give up. And attention to children is like breathing air. We have to breathe to survive. Children have to have attention. We would rather have bad breath than no breath at all. They would rather have negative attention than no attention at all. And the middle child is the first one who gets help outside of the family system. Okay? So now we've got the perfect one, the scapegoat, that's what they call that. Into that, we have a third child. The third child is typically a lost child. They come into the system, and there really is no room for them. They already have a good one and a bad one. They have the angel and the devil. They're good. They have this relationship. He's almost fallen out of the chair sometimes, and now it's taking all three of them to pick him up and put him back in line because the disease has progressed. And so the youngest child, the middle child, goes around pulling on everybody's shirt tails trying to get attention. Is there a place for me? Is there a place for me? And when there isn't, these are the quiet ones. That's why they call them the lost child. These are the ones that are very creative. They go spend a lot of time in music or reading or quiet. They just want to fly under the radar. They don't want to get caught up in that. No attention, in their case, is better than some attention because it's not going to be good whatever it is. If you have a fourth child or a youngest child or a larger family, you're going to see these roles played out more than once potentially. But you will also see the class clown. You're going to see the youngest one. He's the one who now gets diagnosed with ADHD because he can't sit still. He's the class clown. He makes everybody crack up. And he brings some levity into this system. He comes into the system, and the system needs some fun right now because it's gotten way too serious over the years. And so that's what the youngest child does. He's the class clown. And you'll spend a lot of time in the principal's office over that one. All right? All right. So that's our family system. When I saw that done, I wasn't prepared for it because I came from a white picket fence perfect family, I thought. And I didn't realize that being a grandchild of an alcoholic, because my mother's father was alcoholic, we lived with all the dysfunction of the alcoholic home without having something to pin it on that said, it's because Dad gambles. It's because Dad drinks his paychecks away. It's because Dad womanizes. We didn't have that. We just knew that we looked really good. My mom invested herself, raising 5 kids and looking really good. But it felt crazy to be there. And I didn't know why it felt crazy until I saw that. And when I saw that, I saw my sister and my brothers and me, which really surprised me. I saw my husband's family, and I saw the family we were creating together at that point. And I dedicated myself at that point to getting my stuff cleaned out, to getting well, so that I wouldn't pass it on one more generation, because I wanted to stop it at that generation. I knew I couldn't do anything about what had come before me. But as a mother, I had a pivotal point and an opportunity. If I changed what I did, it would change, the ripple effect would occur. I worked with a woman once who was a nurse. She was a registered nurse, and she had a mother who was in her 80s, and she was 56, I think. And she said to me, if my mom would just one time apologize, just once, it would have changed her whole life at 56. Could we try to move that up and get it to where it happens at 26 instead of 56? Can we save 30 years of pain for families just by understanding that there is a system here that plays, it's like autopilot. By the time we're 18, we have 20,000 hours of parent tapes. So we're programmed by the time we leave our home into whatever we think life should be and our roles should be and our rules should be. And dysfunctional family systems basically operate in 3 rules, and you'll be able to tell how healthy your system is by answering these questions. The rules are: don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. If the rules are you don't talk about what happens in this house outside of this house, it's nobody's business, we don't air our dirty laundry. Okay? Don't trust. You don't trust anybody outside of the family. You can't trust them. The only one who's ever going to love you unconditionally is me. And don't feel. No matter what you see, it's not that bad. So we learn to minimize. We say, well, it was no big deal. I worked with a man once who was a minister's son. All 3 of the boys became ministers. And one day, because what happens in our home is what we think is normal. Whatever we grow up with is what we think is normal. And one day, he was telling me about a time when he and his brother did something wrong, and his father took his head through his arm and bashed it through a wall, through a plasterboard wall. I was horrified. That was normal to him. And he said, but we deserved it. Really? So just to put that in perspective, he had 2 young sons. I said, really? What would your boys ever do to make them deserve you putting their head through a wall? It was like he had never thought of that. He would never do that under any circumstances. And in our culture, what would happen if you did? Oh, you'd go to jail. That's not normal, healthy behavior, okay? So part of what we do is we just tell the truth about what we're looking at and how that felt. Instead of putting it away and saying, well, we deserved it, and he was mad and we deserved it, we say, that was really shaming. That really hurt. I had a headache for 4 days. They wouldn't take me to the doctor, and so we butterflied the stitches, whatever that is. There are so many things that we thought was normal that impact the choices and the way that we treat our children today. Have you ever found yourself screaming at your children the very things that were screamed at you that you swore you would never say? Ever? Yeah. Did your children ever do something that you knew no child of yours would ever do because the way you raised them was so much better than what anybody else did? Huh? Welcome to the human condition. Yeah. So that was I'm thinking I'm probably supposed to be close to my 20 minutes.